Welcome to the program False Friends of Fatima. It's based on Chris Ferrara's book, False Friends of Fatima. Chris has told us what the false friends and who the false friends are. And welcome back to the program, Chris.
Thanks, Father. I've appreciated the opportunity to take a grand tour of this whole saga of these people we call false friends of Fatima and their effort to change the message of Fatima into something other than what it really is, which is not just a call for prayer and penance, but a dire warning for the church, and of course a promise of glorious fulfillment when Russia is consecrated and the Immaculate Heart triumphs.
And dare I add,
it's not just gloom and doom at all.
No. In fact, Our Lady came to Fatima to avoid war, to avoid the annihilation of nations, if we would only do what she asked for. But it's not just for the church, certainly for the church primarily, but also every man, woman, and child of whatever religion or no religion are going to be affected if the church does not obey Our Lady of Fatima time. What the false friends of Fatima are doing are trying to placate the consciences of the church members, like the Pope, and say, oh, it's not so bad, don't worry about it. It's going to. Meanwhile, we're all going to towards annihilation of nations, the destruction of a major part of humanity because we don't listen to Our Lady of Fatima, and these false friends are giving this false song to us, and primarily at this point it's Cardinal Bertone. And
well, to restate our theme, the motive behind all of this is that what happened in the church after the Second Vatican Council, the liberalization that we've seen, the opening to the world, the supposed new orientation of the church, is at war with the imperatives of the Fatima message, because the Fatima message is all about the conversion of peoples, Russia first of all, through the Catholic faith, through the consecration of Russia. It's all about hell, which we don't like to talk about anymore. It's all about the salvation of souls. When was the last time you heard high-ranking prelates talk about the need to save our souls? It's all about the triumph of the Immaculate Heart, which could not be more Catholic. All of this is at war with the new, updated, post-Vatican II Church. So the people involved in dumbing down the message of Fatima are trying to eliminate this opposition by reducing Fatima to a kind of spiritual self-improvement program. And I think pray and do penance and forget about that consecration business and the third secret.
And the other side of this, I think, is we should also point out that, as Pope John Paul II pointed out, why did the Blessed Virgin come to Fatima? And he answers his own question by saying, can the mother, who with all the force of the love that she fosters in the Holy Spirit and desires everyone's salvation, can she remain silent when she sees the very basis, the very foundation of their salvation being undermined? And so, no, she cannot remain silent, says the Pope, because she sees our salvation being undermined from within. It's undermined from within. She sees that and she speaks out. But where does she speak out? It's especially in the third secret she speaks out, because she talks about the danger of the faith, the loss of the dogma of the faith. And she's speaking out, but yet Cardinal Bertone and his friends, the false friends of Fatima, are burying it every way they can while pretending to be friends.
We've mentioned Cardinal Bertone for the umpteenth time, and we have to, because he's at the center of this whole melodrama, or what Antonio Socci has called un giallo in Vaticano, a mystery novel. The Italian phrase for mystery novel in the Vatican. But let's be clear about one thing. Although we have to mention Bertone, and although he is the villain of the piece, we don't mean a villain in the sense of someone that we despise or that anyone should hate. All of us are fallen creatures. All of us sin. All of us have things we have to answer for before God, and will answer for on the day of judgment. It's not a question of hating a person or attacking someone at the level of personality. We're only talking about objectively the wrongs that have been committed.
Well, in fact, Cardinal Bertone is the one who becomes the spokesperson. He has taken on the role of being the spokesman for the false friends.
And I'm not here to judge his motive. He may think, subjectively speaking, that the third secret, the part we haven't seen, is just something Sister Lucia wrote that we can't believe in. He may have convinced himself.
He has convinced himself
that it would be a scandal to reveal
But of course,
this.
in fact, he's convinced himself, but that's exactly what Pope Benedict says. He deceives himself who thinks the prophetic mission of Fatima is concluded.
And if we're talking about self-deception, we're not talking about anybody's subjective guilt before God. That's not for us to judge.
Of course. Yeah.
And I'm told that a reliable source learned that Cardinal Bertone read my book on The Secret Still Hidden, and that he replied that the book is pieno di odio, full of hate.
But that's not true. Of course it's not true.
Well,
but it's
in a sense,
hatred of error, yes.
It is exactly true in one sense. That book, for whatever it's worth, I did my best with it. There is a kind of hatred running through the pages of that book. Not for a person, but hatred of what is being done. we should always hate error.
That's right. That's the whole idea.
And as sinner though I am, at least I have enough of the faith to hate sin when I see it, to be ashamed of it when I commit it, and to hate errors. We should all hate error. So what he sees is a kind of percolating contempt for what is being done, not for the people, but for the acts that are being committed.
Well, St. Augustine puts it.
But he confuses the two. He takes it personally.
Your patron saint, St. Augustine, says we must love the sinner but hate the sin.
Right.
And although we're not judging the person whether he's subjectively guilty of the sin, to deceive someone about their eternal salvation is a grave sin in itself. Whether the person is doing that deliberately and knowingly, the fact is it is a terrible sin to deceive people about their salvation. And Our Lady sees our foundation, our salvation in danger, and she tries to warn us. And how does she warn us? In the third secret above all. And yet that is the part that's being suppressed, the part of her word.
So it isn't a question of personal enmity. And if the Cardinal were to be watching this show, I would assure him of that. I don't have any ill will toward him as a person. If I met him and we sat down to chat, I'm sure we would develop a kind of a friendly rapport if he would just listen.
Yes.
And accept the points that we've made in a spirit of Catholic charity and fraternity.
Well, we see that, for example...
It's not a question of my hating anybody or you hating anybody.
Or
for that matter, Sochi hating anybody. Because it's Sochi who wrote the article saying to Cardinal Bertone in public, who between you and me is deliberately lying?
Cardinal Bertone.
Yeah, between you and me, Cardinal Bertone, is deliberately lying. He doesn't hate Bertone any more than I do. Yeah. This is a question of the truth.
Absolutely, and the truth will make us free. And all this is, and this, of course, our Lord said that, Sochi says that, we all say that. The truth will liberate the church. The truth will liberate the faithful who are following a false God, by pointing out what Our Lady wants for this time, which would be the way to liberating the church and the world, for that matter.
Let's pick up the narrative thread of this cover-up of the third secret by what I call Operation False Friends. We mentioned last time the Porta a Porta TV show, where Cardinal Bertone appeared and made many inadvertent admissions that only dug a hole deeper for him. And
which
he
only proved our case.
He showed us two envelopes, and we had always been told it was one envelope. He showed us two envelopes bearing the express order of the Virgin, connecting the secret to 1960 and saying the envelope should be opened only in that year, when he had denied any such connection for years before. He showed us a piece of paper and an envelope whose measurements don't correspond to the measurements that Bishop Venancio made of the envelope and paper that he saw in Fatima back in 1944, was it?
No, it actually been 1957.
1957. So we have all kinds of discrepancies that he revealed. He never discussed the Capovilla envelope, the existence of which is confirmed by a still living eyewitness, Archbishop Loris Capovilla, the personal secretary of John XXIII, an envelope kept in the papal apartment. And so one thing after another was revealed during this show that made things even worse for him. So what did he do? This is amazing. After having appeared on TV once in an effort to shore up his crumbling version of the facts, he had to do another appearance on TV.
He had his own show this time.
But this time he's not being invited on by the networks, who have had quite enough of this. He had to stage his own TV show in an auditorium in the Vatican at the Pontifical Urbaniana University on September 21st, 2007. He had to make another attempt to answer Sochi, because so far he not only failed to answer him, he had made Sochi's case for him. So this time, the pretext is, I'm going to present my book, Last Visionary of Fatima. But that book had been out for months.
It's been out since May 10th, and it's been talked about on the TV show on May 31st.
So now he's presenting it again, supposedly. But the real pretext is to try to lay to rest the explosive revelations that he himself had made regarding the third secret of Fatima, all of which pointed to the existence of a text somewhere in the papal apartment. Who knows where it is now, but that's where it was for many years. And so here he is on TV trying again to put a lid on this controversy that's just boiling over out of control.
Well, but not only does he present himself, but he also has the former bishop of Fatima, I think the third or the fourth one, come. He also has a film clip from Archbishop Capovilla on there. He also has, I think Giuseppe De Carli was there as well.
Well, before we get into those details, let's look at the landscape that confronted him when he did this second TV show. He had to explain the etc. Our Lady said, in Portugal, the dogma of the faith will always be conserved, and Sister Lucia added, and etc. This is obviously the beginning of the third secret. It obviously relates to a crisis of dogma outside of Portugal, and it obviously relates to the ultimate scene in the vision published in 2000, where the Pope is executed outside the city, filled with dead bodies.
And also it shows that Our Lady said more words than that with the etc. there.
She's obviously had something to say about a crisis in the church. He had to confront that. It wasn't going away. He also had to confront the existence of the Capovilla envelope containing the text that was in the papal apartment, which he has thus far refused to address. He had to confront the evidence that Capovilla knew that John the 23rd had read the text, had resealed it into the envelope, refusing to give a judgment on its contents, and that the text that John the 23rd read on that occasion required a Portuguese translator. Because it was too...
It hadn't recorded because there was dialectical phrases that you couldn't just learn from. We had to be a native Portuguese to get some of these phrases.
And he also had to confront the revelation that he himself had made on Porta a Porta during the previous telecast in May, that Cardinal Ottaviani, who had custody of a text of the third secret of Fatima, categorically, he said, Bertone said, categoricamente, had testified that the text he had in his custody was 25 lines. Yet the vision is 62 lines. All of these facts, and so many more we can't get into, were swirling around him, confounding him like bees coming at him from every direction and stinging him.
Well, in fact,
his story is covered with welts. What is he going to do at this point? He has to address these facts.
Well, in fact, because in May, when he came out with his book on May the 10th, 2 days later, Sochi responded to him with that famous line, "Dear Cardinal Bertone, who between you and me is deliberately lying?" Then on May 31st, he goes on to respond to that, and Sochi answers him 2 days later in another column, which the Italian nation reads. So then he goes on radio in June 2 times, between June 1st and June 10th. But all of this is not putting the thing to rest, but only making it worse. So finally he comes up with this thing to go on
So
TV.
he is in the auditorium at the Pontifical Urbaniana University. And let me set the scene here. This is an amazing event in recent church history. Here he is. He's coming to this auditorium to participate in this dog and pony show, which, as we will see, does nothing to lay the controversy to rest. And who should arrive there in an effort to encounter Cardinal Bertone? None other than Antonio Sochi, accompanied by none other than Solideo Paolini, who had received from Archbishop Capovilla the answer per lo punto, exactly so, to the question, are there two different texts in two different envelopes?
Yeah, and he said, yes, exactly
There are
so.
two key players in the drama waiting for the villain of the piece
To show up.
to show up at the auditorium. And why were they there at the auditorium?
Well,
Because Sochi said, I wanted to ask him one question, because he knew he had only the
One
chance to.
question.
And the question is, will you swear that there's nothing pertaining to the third secret in the phrase, in Portugal,
following the phrase,
in Portugal the dogma of the faith will always be conserved, etc. Will you swear under oath that there's nothing further in those words of the Virgin pertaining to the third secret? That's the only question he wanted to ask, because that's the only question that Cardinal Bertone had avoided like the plague. He had never discussed.
in the book, he never answers it.
No.
And on TV, Porta Porta, he never answers it.
And yet we know it's part of the secret, because Our Lady was speaking to her and said, yes, you may tell Francisco afterwards.
Yeah.
Because Francisco couldn't hear what the Virgin was saying during the apparitions. He could only see things.
Yeah.
There was no need to tell him what he had seen. But she said, regarding Portugal and the rest of the secret, yes, you can tell Francisco,
Yes.
meaning the things that she said.
Yes.
So something about this secret involves what the Virgin said. So here's Antonio Sochi, the respected, renowned Italian intellectual, author, journalist, and commentator, waiting to pounce on Cardinal
Not to pass,
Bertone.
but to ask the question that was on the tongue of everybody who knew the issue. This was the point.
And Sochi recounts it on his website. Bertone sees him and immediately walks the other way and goes in through an emergency entrance to get into the auditorium.
So just I think we need to set the setting a little further. The Urbaniana University has a gate, to the outside the street. You come inside the gate, then you have a courtyard, and then from the courtyard you can go into the hall. So in fact, Sochi had been inside the hall because he wanted to ask a question during at the question and answer session. But Father Lombardi told Sochi there will be no questions from the press accepted at this conference. So with knowing that, he said, well, I might as well ask the question of Bertoni before he comes to the hall, since there's no questions during the hall.
So he waits outside
So
the
he
door.
waits outside the door, waiting at the main entrance. But Bertoni sees him coming. He sees Sochi, and what does he do? He runs for a secondary entrance so he doesn't have to meet Sochi.
And this is a fellow that had befriended the cardinal, because as Sochi pointed out in his book, The Fourth Secret of Fatima, they had done a press conference together.
Yes.
And he had requested an interview from Cardinal Bertoni about the third secret with the aim of helping Bertoni. He wanted to get the facts from Bertoni so he could destroy your version of the events. And Bertoni refused his friend an interview. And that's when Sochi began to suspect, as he says in his book, that there was something serious being hidden here. And that began the opening of his eyes and the process by which he came to agree with you and with the so-called Fatimist position. So here he is waiting to ask this one question.
And beside him
Bertone
is
with Soledeo Paolini.
His prime witness, the man who spoke to Archbishop Capovilla, the man who has in his bag, by the way, actually he gave it to Sochi, but a recording of Cardinal...
Something else that Archbishop Capovilla said. We'll hold that to the end for a surprise. So what happens? The security guards bodily throw them out of the building.
Not out of the courtyard.
Out of the grounds of the university.
They weren't allowed back in. After Bertoni goes in, they weren't allowed back in, as far as I recall. But certainly the security guards, they saw Sochi talking there, peaceably with some journalists, and said, "You can't do that." And so they threw him off the property.
But before they threw him off the property, and we'll mention this at the end, he plays a tape recording of Archbishop Capovilla.
Yes,
it's just like a mystery novel. Yeah. And all the journalists heard this tape recording before they threw Sochi out of the place, along with Soledeo Paolini. And by the way, now the Soledeo Paolini nor Sochi is an imposing figure physically.
No,
Soledeo Paolini is a frail, slender, scholarly young fellow.
Yeah.
You could, if you blew on him, he'd fall over. Yeah. Here they are being hustled out of the university grounds by security guards, so that the cardinal doesn't have to be confronted with the question which, like a can opener, will open up the whole can and reveal its contents to the world. He won't answer that question. Yeah. What's in the etc. So anyway, he stages this TV show, having eliminated any possibility of a confrontation. And like the book he had written before, and like his other statements that are supposed to be a response to Sochi, it's a lot of nothing. Yeah. It's just an hour and a half of nothing. There's speeches about Sister Lucia and various other interventions, and then they produce what they think is going to be their Exhibit A. Because for months now, it had been revealed to Sochi that Archbishop Capovilla had answered per l'appunto, exactly so, in response to the question whether there were two different texts that belonged together in two different envelopes.
Not only Sochi knew this, but for example, this interview that Soledeo Paolini had done with, in fact, was done over several times, because one was by phone, one was in person, was done in July and August, I believe, or July of 2006. By November, Sochi publishes his book. It's gone into 20,000 copies in Italian. But besides that, on his magazine article, Libero, he puts it in his article, the interview with Soledeo with Capovilla. So there's hundreds of thousands of people know about this thing by November of 2006. And then, of course, it comes up again and again. And you find that in May, when he puts out his book, what's his name? Cardinal Bertoni pretends that Soledeo doesn't exist, and the testimony of Capovilla doesn't exist. In the Porta, it's still not, they don't even mention.
But now, in September 2007, he's going to broadcast an interview.
Because they can't ignore it anymore.
He's going to broadcast a video clip of an interview of Archbishop Capovilla, the witness who says there are two texts and two envelopes. Oh, well, this is great. So now Capovilla will come forward, one would think, and deny that he ever said any such thing.
To Soledeo,
he will say, I never said there were two texts and two envelopes. No, he made that up. That's a lie. So they played the video clip. Does he say that? Absolutely not. Does he even mention Soledeo Paolini? No. He never denies the existence of the two texts and the two envelopes.
And his statement to Soledeo.
He's never even asked about his admission to Soledeo Paolini. It's still as if Soledeo Paolini never existed and that Capovilla never made the admission that he made. But during the same videotape interview, part of which was broadcast, amazingly enough, Capovilla confirms that there was indeed a Capovilla envelope containing a text of the secret kept in the papal apartments of John the 23rd in a writing desk called Barbarigo.
Which is exactly what Soledale had reported, which Sochi had reported in his book the year before.
So not only, after having failed and refused for years to discuss the text in the papal apartment, Bertone provides a video clip of Capovilla, which is supposed to be helping him, in which Capovilla admits that there is an envelope containing a text in the papal apartment.
And there's
no witness.
And there's an envelope, and then he says that there's an envelope, which, of course, the envelope we know from has the writing of Capovilla on it, and we have the certified decree document from Capovilla saying, his pro memoria, saying that he wrote on there, and then Paul VI asked him about it. Why is your name on this envelope?
So he confirms the very existence of the envelope, whose existence he refuses to admit himself, thereby undermining his own case. Now, this is amazing. What happens after the video clip is broadcast and Capovilla confirms the existence of this envelope in the papal apartments that we've never seen, which is distinct from the envelope Bertone produced in 2000.
The envelopes.
We'll call that, the outer envelope with all the other envelopes inside. We'll call that the Bertone envelope.
Envelopes.
So after he admits that there's a Capovilla envelope and a Bertone envelope, after Capovilla admits this, then the interviewer who conducted this video interview, Giuseppe De Carli, who co-wrote Last Visionary with Cardinal Bertone, comes on camera and he says, "From this I conclude that the Bertone envelope and the Capovilla envelope are one and the same." Huh?
Well,
he concludes.
Yeah.
Well, Capovilla didn't conclude that.
No.
Capovilla said, "I have my envelope. It's in the papal apartment." De Carli comes on camera and says, "Well, that's the same as the Bertone envelope." How could it be? It's not the same envelope.
Yes.
On the Capovilla envelope, there's Capovilla's handwriting. There's a list of names of people who read the contents of that envelope. And there's the statement dictated by John the 23rd that he will leave it to his successors to determine what the contents of that envelope mean. They're not the same envelope at all. He brazenly asserts an absolute falsehood, that the two envelopes are the same.
In fact, you confronted De Carli the next year at our conference about that very point.
As this show progresses, we will see in the very next chapter of this book, in fact, that I confronted De Carli with this fact and demanded an answer to the question how he could say Bertone's envelope, which we have seen, meaning the outer envelope with the other three envelopes inside, and the Capovilla envelope, which we have never seen, are the same. How could he say that? We'll find out in the next episode what happened when I confronted him on that. But here we have Capovilla confirming the very existence of the smoking gun that we've asserted exists all along. How does this help him? I don't know. It seems that every time he tries to shore up his official version, he just digs the hole deeper. And it collapses even further into a pit of self-contradictions and misrepresentations. So anyway, this show goes on for quite a bit of time. And he produces another witness on his behalf.
Yeah.
Bishop Seraphim.
That's the one I want
of Fatima.
Yes.
Bishop Seraphim of Fatima shows up on camera, and he gives a statement that can only be crafted by a lawyer. He says, "I don't know anything about anything. I just know that Lucy authenticated one envelope, and I can tell you," and here's the direct quote, "the secret of Fatima has been revealed in an authentic and integral way."
So the secret of Fatima.
That's a very lawyerly phrase.
Well, first of all, was not the Bishop Seraphim the one who was allegedly the witness to Cardinal Bertone's statements, and he said, "He's my witness to these things"? Lucy admitted these, she lied or something like that? Is that what was it?
Yeah, he claims that the Seraphim was present when Sister Lucia admitted that she confessed that there was no connection between the secret and 1960.
Well, now here you have the Seraphim coming on and says, "I got nothing to say except to say the
only one thing I know," he said.
Okay.
Only one thing. That the secret as Fatima has been revealed in an authentic and integral way. Now, I'm an attorney, okay? And I'm used to witnesses testifying in the courtroom and in depositions. I'm used to watching witnesses hedge the truth. They try to lie by seeming to tell the truth. So it would be like a witness being asked, "Did you reveal the contents of that communication from Mr. Smith entirely? Did you hold anything back whatsoever?" And the witness responds, "I revealed what Mr. Smith told me in an authentic and integral way." Come on, you answer yes or no to that question. Did you reveal everything? Yes or no?
Of course, and for people to understand how this mental reservation is working is that they're all holding this myth that's saying there's another text that Sister Lucy wrote, but we all agree that's Bertoni and other officials in the Vatican who don't want Lucy's words to come out or these words to come out and say, well, that other one's not authentic. So I revealed the whole thing in an authentic way, meaning I didn't reveal the part that I judged to be inauthentic. But they're not telling you that, and you have to know how they're playing the mind
It's
games.
a mental reservation. It's like someone asking you, is Mr. Smith here? And you say, nope, he's not here, meaning he's in the next room.
Yes.
So you're not telling them the whole truth. And so have you revealed the entire third secret? Oh, we revealed it authentically, meaning the inauthentic part, the part in the next room, meaning the papal apartment. That's not authentic. We don't have to mention that because we've made an authentic and integral revelation. Yeah. Now, a witness is telling the simple truth would say, we revealed the whole third secret. There's nothing else.
Yes.
There's no other text. There's no text, authentic or inauthentic, that would contradict our version of events. No, he hedges and uses the loyalty phrase.
So I see that, of course, we're running out of time in this program again. But here we have the Cardinal Bertoni show on September 21st, and he brings his prime witness forward, his prime witness being the Bishop of Fatima, the former Bishop of Fatima, and he says, we revealed it in an authentic way. Meaning, we haven't revealed the other part that we consider inauthentic, but we're not going to talk to you about that.
Well, we'll get to further discussions or an exploration of the inauthentic part,
yes,
which is the part we have yet to see in the next episode. And we'll talk about some other false friends of Fatima if we have the time.
Yes. So thank you for joining us on this program, False Friends of Fatima, which is inspired by the book Chris Ferrara wrote, False Friends of Fatima, which exposes the betrayers of Our Lady of Fatima while pretending to be friends of Fatima and being your friends when they're actually deceiving you one way or the other. Remember to pray the rosary every day as Our Lady told us, and don't be deceived by the false friends of Fatima. See you next time on this program.